Hi there, folks, and welcome back to another episode of Solar City Garage. Missed you all last week, but don't worry, I was here busy working. Let me show you what I've done. First, I'd like to thank everybody that's continued watching the progress on this motor, and the people that continue to like and subscribe to the channel. It does make a big difference. So yeah, I think we're getting pretty close to 200. That's awesome. So let's keep building here. All right, let me show you some of the stuff I've done. 1 second. Okay, folks, here we are. Let's take a look at what we've gotten done. As you can see, the engine is all cleaned up, and by gosh, it's turned green. Maybe it's moldy. No, just kidding. That is Ford engine green. That's my preferred color for all Model T engines. Whether it's right or not, don't care. It's kind of what I like. So everything has been cleaned thoroughly, painted, and ready to have things installed in it. And then over here, we've been getting out new parts, valve springs, and the lifters are there, and see the valves are there. We've got the camshaft here. And as you can see, we put the new cam gear on it. We got to use our handy dandy little socket that we bought. Not necessary, but it sure makes life a lot easier. And then over here, we've been doing some more bead blasting and painting. We got the correct timing cover painted up, generator mount, some fasteners. We cleaned them all up, painted them black, and cylinder head and valve cover, and got out some of the gaskets. So as you can see, we've got a lot to do, but this is exciting because we get to put all these new parts that we've paid for put in there. So let's go back over here to the motor and let's get to work. Okay, folks, here we go. The first thing we're going to do is, before we put the camshaft in, is we're going to slip the lifters down in place. Now we numbered them. You can see that or not with all the glare on the face of each one as we took them out. We're going to wipe them off just to be sure they're clean. And then I'm going to take a little oil. First thing is, let's turn so the crankshaft is not in the way. There we go. That's better. So number one, of course, this motor's upside down, but number one is up here towards the crankshaft end, the pulley end. We're going to put a little oil on there, and we're going to put her down in place. It gets to stay there permanently. Then we'll find number two, clean it off, and we'll repeat. All right, there all the lifters are in. Now we can work on sliding our camshaft in. I'll reset it so you can see, and we'll go from there. Okay, now we're going to take our cam, and we're just going to wipe off the surfaces. Cam bearings are nice and free. Now, just remember, I've got this hole in this bearing and this bearing. And when we slide this in, we want to line it up to where the two holes are here. So we want to kind of start them in the right direction. So let me come over here. So as we start the cam in, we're going to turn this bearing so the hole is facing the valve cover side of the motor. Like that. That'll help us out a little later. Sometimes they get a little snug. And we're going to just keep slowly working in here, okay? Till we get up about to here. We'll turn that bearing so it's pointed, and that bearing. Now, what we have to do next is set our timing marks. If you can see on the gear here, there's a dot. I put a black line. And on the crankshaft, I don't know if you can see it or not, there's a tooth here that had the Ford script on it. And what we have to do is get this turned so that that tooth will go in this slot in the gear. We're going to have to turn the crank some to do that. It's hard to ever get the light where you want it. All right, so we're trying to get to where those would align. We're going to have to turn the crank. We're going to turn the crank some more. Okay, maybe I'll have to get you down in here so you can see. Okay, we'll grab the other camera here so that we can get a better look of what we're talking about. See right there, you can see the mark on the cam gear, and there you can see the mark on the crankshaft. And what you want is to start that mark in the beginning of that channel in the gear there. See, right now it looks like it's not really lined up, but it is. As we push that gear in, they should line up. So let's give that a shot. It's going to be hard to do. There we go. So as you can see, I'm sorry guys, I need an extra hand. The tooth that had the Ford on it and the dot on the new gear are lined up. So the timing gear is in time. So now let's work on lining up the lock bolts. Okay, so now after we got the cam in and we're sure that it's in time, we can look at our holes here, and if we've guessed correctly, the bolt should be pretty close. Just reach in there with a Phillips screwdriver and kind of roll them around where they need to be. It shouldn't move hard. So there, that one's lined up. That one's lined up pretty close. Let me grab the bolts. Okay, sorry about my head being in the way. That bolt, remember, these are the ones with the little pin on the end. So you just start this in, and it should just go right in. Almost clear down. Now let's look in this one. Be sure. We'll start this one. All right, I'm going to grab a socket, a ratchet. I believe they're 9/16. Been wrong before. See, you gotta be sure they go in on their own, flat to the block. No force. So, those just get tight, and that's it. So there, our camshaft. See, we still got a little end play, which is good. Our camshaft is in place permanently, as is the lifters. You don't want to forget to put those bad boys in before you put this camshaft in. All right, I'm going to put a little oil on the cam bearings there, and then we'll reset. Okay folks, we're back. We have rotated the motor over, and I have inserted the valves. Remember, we had them marked in order just like the lifters because we did some pre-fitting here. So you put those in, a little oil on the stem, and then we're going to set the valves. So the first thing you're going to have to do is rotate this, whatever cylinder you're working on, so that it's pretty close to the top dead center. The piston will be pretty close to the top. When you rock the flywheel back and forth, there should be zero movement in these. They're both on the heels of the cam. In fact, you can reach under here and feel that the lobe is pointed away. So, what we're going to need to do next is get a feeler gauge. I guess there you are. And then I do have lifter wrenches, but 3/8 wrenches will work just fine too. Now, something you might have noticed, when these are clear down on the lifter, the little shoulders that you grab onto the lifter body are below the block here, or they're just above it. You could just catch a wrench on there, which might take a chance of slipping. So we don't have the valve springs on for this very reason, so that we can push things up and down. Now, I've already set this first valve as practice, just to get myself honed in here. So let's do this valve, because we know it is down the same as this cylinder. So we're going to stick our feeler gauge in here. Yep, and it's loose like it should be, because remember, we set this gap when we ground the stems. We set it a little wide so we'd have some play room. So we know the gap is too loose, so the bolt has to come out. Righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. So what I like to do is pick up on the lifter, put a wrench on it, and just kind of push in. That'll hold the lifter up and get a good bite with the wrench. And let's just turn, remember these turn hard, let's just turn it out about that far. This is a trial and error system. So you gotta make sure your valve's clear down, hold on to it. Okay, we're better, but we're still don't have the drag that we want. So you just work back and forth. If you need to go more, you take the bolt out a little bit. If you get it too tight, just screw it back down in. So we're going to take this one a little more. Not a lot. We'll push the valve down, make sure the lifter's down. You can see we still need to go a little more. Sometimes you can compare the feel from one that you were satisfied with that's next door. I know it's hard to see in here, but just take small increments, valves down. We're getting so close. There we've got pretty nice drag. I would say those two are very equivalent. Now you're probably asking, well, what clearance are you using? Boy, that's kind of like asking what kind of oil to use or whether or not to use a water pump, or, you know, everybody's got their own deal, and that's great. Everybody deserves to have their own deal. So, of course, the original Ford with the two-piece valves, those valves tended to grow in length a lot. I've seen a lot of arguments where it's whether it's old cam, new cam, and all that jazz, where really, in my opinion, yes, that makes a difference on the amount of lift, total lift, but it shouldn't really make any difference on valve clearance, except the fact that maybe things will wear in a little more. So I've seen anywhere from 10 thousandths to 15 thousandths. So memory serves me right, the original Ford spec was the thickness of a dime, which is pretty close to 30 thousandths, I believe. So I like to be different than anybody, so I picked 13 thousandths. I used to set them at 12, and to be perfectly honest, my 12 thousandths feeler gauge is pretty rough. So I went with 13. It's well within between that 10 and 15 thousandths. Because we have adjustable lifters, it's not a huge deal if we have to go back and change one, pull the valve cover and do that. But usually you never have to touch them again for as much as these get driven. So that's what I picked, 13 thousandths. Is it right or wrong? I don't know. It's just what I'm going to do. It's a thousandth more than I used to. So yeah, we got new lifters, new valves, valve seats are done, and a good used cam. So there we have it. So I'm going to continue on here, and you can watch as we continue through. So we got 2 down, 6 to go. Oops. All right, so there we are. All the valves are adjusted. I'm real happy with them. After we put the valve springs back in, we will double check them just to be sure that nothing moved or a valve wasn't sticking up a little bit. So there we go. I'm going to reset, and then we will put the valve springs and the keepers and all that good stuff in, and I'll be back. All right, thanks. Okay, folks, we're reset here, and the next thing we're going to do is put our valve springs and keepers and all that good jazz in. Yes, I've cheated and done a couple. It's been a while since I've done these, so. Anyway, just like setting the valves, we want the cylinder at top dead center so that the lifters are down. Okay, because these springs aren't stiff, but yet it's not the easiest thing in the world to get in there. But it isn't bad. So we have new springs, new caps, and new pins for mines. Okay, what we want to do, see I've threaded a bolt in here, an old fine thread long bolt. And I've always used the little ones that pinched in here, the valve spring tools. But I bought this one from the vendor with this hook. And it's got this little doohickey on here on the end where it's machined out to help fit the cup. I'd never used one of these before, that's why I tried it on the first two, and I kind of like it. It changes the way you do them, but it seems to work just fine, and it's fairly inexpensive. So what we got to do is push the valve up, start the spring up in there, and I leave the valve up if it'll stay there. Sometimes that cold oil will help them stay there. And you hook that over the bolt, come straight in. Well, the other two went just like clockwork. So what we're going to do is we're going to set the cap in that groove, and we're going to come up here and get it just like that. We're going to set the spring and the cap right on top of the lifter. Now, one thing to do on the valve is look at the hole, and you kind of want it pointing towards you at an angle. So you push the valve down in. Now we're going to grab a new pin. We're going to hook this back up. And then sometimes you have to hold down on the valve. We're going to push that up. We're going to line up our pin. You know, the first two went just lickety-split, but we got the pin in now. We're slowly going to let that down. And be sure that the pin went up in the recess of the cap. And it did. So there. Just like that. Each bolt hole does each cylinder here, where the exhaust manifold and the intake manifold bolt. So let's try this again. So we'll push the valve up. If it doesn't stay, just take it out. We're going to start that up over the nub and the block. Hook our tool in here. And then, oops. Whenever that camera's rolling, things just never quite go as planned. But that wasn't so bad. So there we did that. Kind of center it on the lifter. Now we'll look at the hole in the valve, kind of make it face us a little bit. And we're going to grab a pin. Then we're going to get over here, get the valve to go down through the hole, slip the pin in, let it down, and done. All right, I'm going to finish the rest of these up. We'll probably speed up the video a little bit. But you see, it's not rocket science. But while this cylinder is down at top dead center, we are going to recheck our clearances. And they are just where we left them. So, and I did that on this cylinder too. So we're good to go. So I'm going to turn this next one to top dead center, and then we'll go from there. All right, here we go. Okay, we have the generator mount. See, it's been bead blasted and painted. I also have used some 3M gasket adhesive and glued the gasket to there. I'm not a big fan of gooping both sides of the gasket on something like this. This is a very thin gasket for a reason. That's to keep the spacing correct. So I did put a little glue on the other side, and this side I left clean, because it does affect how the generator meshes into the timing gear. So we've got our both bolts here. Have been cleaned up. And we're going to hold this up here like this. We're going to start the short one, and we'll come over here, start the long one. Notice they just screw right in like so. They're 5/8. So we'll take our ratchet and we'll run these up till they're tight. Just snug it first. And those are just tight, okay? Nothing crazy. Okay. And we're tight. What I might do is loosen this top one, because it was hanging over. I want it flush with the end of the block, and that's what we've got now. So if it stays there, perfect. This is the surface your timing cover goes on. There we go. Nice and flat there now. Gasket all stayed in place, so we're good to go there. Next, we're going to get the timing cover ready. We've got to do half our main seal on the front here, and glue the gasket on it, and then we'll be right back. All right, thanks. Okay, so we're back. Now it's time to deal with the timing cover. Of course, here it is, all been bead blasted. Glued the gasket to it. Plus, I have the front seal in it. Now, there's several different ways you can do the front seal. This is an original soft felt one. They have a hard style, which is like what's used in the Model A engine. And then they have a modern seal. And this crankshaft, it's smooth, but it's pretty pitted from rust from sitting. But I did run some emery cloth around it, and it feels pretty good. The pitch should help hold a little grease. Because what I like to do with the felt ones is put them in my hand and saturate them with grease. You can see it's nice and pink there. They're tan when they're new. That way it doesn't ever run dry, and it seems to conform a little better. And also it swells up a little bit. So might make fitting the cover a little harder, but in the end it's going to be a better product. So let's hold this up there. Well, I'm going to set this up here. Then we have the bolts here, and you can see there's, I've bead blasted and painted these bolts. I like to stick them in a piece of cardboard. These other holes here were bolts we'd used earlier. So yeah, it just helps keep things organized. So that's just the way I like to do it. Plus the cardboard keeps the threads clean, no paint. I got grease. You know, wheel bearing grease is funny. One little speck turns into a pound. Okay, so let's put this up there. Kind of line it up like so. Make sure our seal stayed in place. And now we're gonna have to push it down like that. And the seal all stayed in place. Let's start I got too many things in my hands, plus grease. So let's start with these little bolts here. So these covers are not an exact fit. And sometimes they need a little persuasion. So I got a Phillips screwdriver here. We're going to pull this down till we can start. You just have to kind of feel it around, jiggle it. Okay. See, that seal is fighting us, right? Well, there the top one started. Let's see if we can get some more of these smaller ones started. Okay, that one started on its own. You can see it pushed out some grease here, which is good. Okay, so we're going to run those up a little bit. These small ones are 9/16. Be sure you don't have them cross-threaded. Okay, we just want it so they touch. Then we'll back them out just a little bit. Okay, we still want this cover to float because we're going to do an alignment on the cover. Okay, so we're pushed up there. Okay, now we got these three in just touching. Let's screw this big one in and have it just touch. Now, we have this timing cover alignment tool that we got at our friends from Lang's. Is it 100% necessary? Well, that just depends on who you talk to. We are going to run a brush style timer on this, which gives us a little more forgiveness. But we're running a modern seal. So I think it's important with a modern seal to be centered. There's no forgiveness in the seal. So what you do is this just slips over the cam like that. Now, I didn't center that thing up or nothing, okay? But as you can see, it goes right in, so we don't have to do any prying or prodding. And we'll leave it in there while we snug the timing cover bolts down. Okay, tighten that one, and that one, and that one. So now we're going to make sure this just slips in and out, which it does, so we're all in alignment. We're going to snug this down. Okay, big one first. And the three little ones. So there we go. See, this goes on and off real easy. So that's good. We wouldn't have bought that tool, we'd have fought, we wouldn't have known. So now we know. So we'll just keep re-snugging these down as the gasket compresses a little and the glue. Once again, you notice I didn't goop everything up. And a lot of people ask, well, why didn't you put this all together and then paint it? Well, I'd like it to look like you cared. Whether that was original or not, I don't know. But I like to see the clean gasket in between. I think when a person looks at the engine, they appreciate all the different things that have been apart. And they're like, wow, that person cared when they put it back together. So anyway, you do it however you want. It's your motor. Okay, now that the timing cover is on and it's verified to be centered, which was easy to do. Next, we're going to put in the modern cam seal. So I ordered this seal from Lang's. I took a little grease and put on the inside lip, and it's made to sit right in that notch in the cover. Now this is the other part I like about this alignment tool, is you can also use it to drive the seal. In fact, I think it's more valuable to do that than the centering, but if it's centered and we use the tool to put it in, how can we go wrong? So there, modern cam seal is in. That wasn't so bad. So now I think the next thing we need to do is, I think we should button up the top end by putting the cylinder head on. I've got it all bead blasted and cleaned, and I've cleaned out the steam holes, which were plugged tight. Bead blasted it and painted it, have a new copper head gasket, and we'll coat the gasket. I also have a new set of nickel plated head bolts. Kind of splurged there a little bit because I like the way they look. I like contrast in these engines. I like black bolts and the green paint and the silver nickel colored head bolts. I just think it looks neat. So, all right, I'll get reset here and we'll do that next.